well, there's nothing you can do as far as the externals that's going to prevent you from still suffering from the disease. You can only do your best personally to try to prevent the disease from getting the best of you.
Right.
And if Kim's not ready to do that, I mean, it doesn't really matter what the consequences are.
Maybe you should share with people how far down you went. I mean, think of the things that happened to you.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly spent plenty of nights in jail, and I disappointed my entire family.
Seizure, cardiac arrest?
Towards the end, I was rushed to the hospital overdosing all the time. I mean, so rapidly, consistently
Mike,
that I lost
why didn't you just stop, son? Why didn't you just stop doing those drugs? Don't you understand what you're doing to your family when you're nearly dying like that? I mean, that's what's so crazy about people talking to addicts that way.
Yeah.
They can't.
Well, and also, I mean, I do think that there's this pervasive idea that it is a lack of willpower or something that, you know, and I guess
the tipping point then.
Well, ironically, it had nothing to do with anything major. It was one of those days where I just happened to be drinking by myself and taking drugs, and I thought that I could probably live a better life. At least if I had a chance, chance at putting together a nice life, it probably wouldn't be in a motel in Inglewood drinking Bud Light by myself. But
that's what they call the moment of clarity, and that's why they seem so spiritual, because sometimes they come from nowhere. On the phone, I have Taylor Armstrong. She is one of Kim Richards' former castmates on The Real Housewives. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate you joining us again. I want a couple quick questions. Is it right that people on the show, or whatever it was about the culture of the show, they don't like talking about addiction?
Yeah, I think addiction and abuse and things like that are just taboo subjects in general, and trying to point the finger when you're not a doctor and saying you're an addict or you're an alcoholic versus you're a party girl. You know, I think that trying to determine those things isn't our place in the first place. But the stress of doing the show is so high that I think someone who is prone to addiction, it's just going to play out that way.
And having said that, Taylor, do you think Kim should recuse herself from the show? I mean, she needs it financially. She's in trouble financially. She's an adult. Even though she's an addict, she can give consent to be on something like this. What should she do?
You know, it's really a challenge to say, because for me, you know, back when I stayed on the show and had abuse in my life, people say to me, why would you ever do a reality show when you knew that there was abuse in your life? Two reasons. One, I thought the cameras would maybe kind of be a watchdog for what was going on behind the scenes, because people don't typically act up in public. And maybe for Kim, she feels like it kind of is a watchdog for her, too, and it might help her keep on track.
You see, I think, Taylor, thank you very much. That's a really interesting thing. That's what I found working with addicts on television. They end up wanting to do well in the eyes of the public, and then they value their treatment, and then they want to be an example for other people. So...
well, it could go that way.
Could go that way, right.
But she is in the throes of her addiction right now, seemingly.
Yes.
She's not had any control. She hasn't learned enough coping
skills
at least to survive.
She needs time out now for sure.
She needs the time out.
But I get very upset when people, they misunderstand that you can't really blame an addict for his or her addiction, but you certainly can blame them for their recovery or lack thereof.
Hold them accountable.
And it's not Bravo's fault. It's not any of the other housewives. This is her personal problem, and they can be there to support her, but by no means is putting her on TV making it harder for her. It's going to be an internal decision regardless.